Hello, thank you for asking me to do a lightning talk today. My name's Pendrey. My contact details are here on the first slide if there is any follow-up questions or a continuation of the conversation that you may wish to have following my presentation. My title is Creativity, Curiosity and Professional Standards. It's a short session and I just wanted us to reflect upon not just all of the professional standards, but maybe just take one and think about the one professional standard that asks us to inspire, motivate and raise the aspirations of our learners through our own enthusiasm and knowledge. That asks us to be highly reflective individuals. But my question here is, how do the formal set of professional standards allow us as educators to be curious, to be creative, and in turn, do we really embrace and embed our professional imagination, or does the formality of the professional standards stifle curiosity and creativity? And this is where I'm going to show you this slide. I think we've all had these sessions where you've actually planned this wonderful lesson, but actually what happens is the bottom picture, the actual lesson. And that's okay. And I think when we're working with initial teacher trainers, it's an important tool to say to them, this is highly reflective, this is where you will use your professional standards, but don't be fearful. And fear is something I'm just going to quickly talk about throughout the presentation, because sometimes I do believe we can be fearful of interacting with the professional standards and be fearful of using our professional imagination and be fearful of using our creativity and our curiosity. A curious journey, a reflective journey, is an exploration of your knowledge. It's where you've gained independence and autonomy. And I wonder whether we have enough autonomy using our professional standards. How can we make our initial teacher trainers much more curious about these standards, much more curious about who they are as individuals? And I would argue, having taught many initial teacher trainers and level 3 practitioners going into vocational courses, that until you actually know who you are as an individual, can you become highly reflective? Do you not have to be curious about the individual that you are in your being in the moment? And that brings us to ontology, the nature of being in the here and now, which is where your initial teacher trainers might be, but where are they going in the future? How are we going to suck them in and compel their attention to work with the professional standards? How can we be curious and reflective and strive for a space where we can thrive and be imaginative and creative and curious? With an early years background, I found curiosity universal in babies. It's something that we appreciate, we applaud, we use day to day in early years practice. As babies, they're exploring their environment, they're curious, they're creative, and it's when they're at this peak that they learn much more. But I wonder, as initial teacher trainers, have we learnt to become compliant? Are we almost fearful of being curious? What's making us fearful? How can we give our initial teacher trainers much more freedom to interact with professional standards, to interact with their own curiosity and creativity, which in turn you could argue would make them much more reflective practitioners? Having worked with lots of initial teacher trainers, I often find they find it very difficult to write reflectively and find it difficult to celebrate strengths. And I wonder if it's because they're not so curious about themselves. And I've done a lot of research into using artifacts for curiosity. How to make your individual teacher trainers curious about themselves. And it's fair to say to them that reflection isn't easy, and often I refer to it as a bit of a swamp. It's sticky, it's muddy, sometimes you can't get out of the swamp. You're reflecting in and on action, as Sean would say. But if you're curious about your practice and if you're curious about the professional standards, then you might thrive more. You might stay in that swampy lowland. You know, it's not technical, is it, reflective practice? It's really muddy and sticky and swampy. And so if everyone's interested, following on from this presentation, I've done quite a bit of research into using artifacts about curiosity and curiosity about who you are as a person, which we've then linked to the professional standards. Einstein purports that it's a miracle actually that curiosity survives formal education, and if you think about as individuals how compliant we have to be sometimes with professional standards, our curriculum, I would ask us to consider how the professional standards allow trainee teachers to display curiosity, to be creative, and in turn to become that highly reflective professional using all of Brookfield's lenses. Thank you. Happy reflecting, and here's a slide for a few references, and as I say, my contact details are on the first slide. Thank you for listening.